Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. And hello to our very special guest, Leigh Harrington. Leigh Harrington.
Hello.
Hi, Leigh.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Hi, David. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi. Leigh Harrington is one of the original TEAM therapists. You were in David's first team, what is it, a study group or a supervision group at Stanford when you were a psychiatric resident there, right? How did you guys meet?
Yeah, David was running.
We met on a blind date, actually. But I was married at the time, so it was a problem.
Oh, that would be a good story.
I'm just being ridiculous here. But we met. Did we meet in the weekly training group? Is that how that happened? Or
yeah. Back in the day when it was smaller, Helen and Matt. I guess Helen predated me a teeny bit. Mm-hmm. And Matt and I, and it was a small group, other people, Anthony were around.
Mascala, yeah, he was cool.
Anthony
All those
Mascala.
people were great.
Yeah.
And I think even for a time that Moore Caps was a member.
And then he was, yep. And then he joined, he was, a few years. He came into the residency a few years, like I think my chief year.
I see. What year was that? Do you recall when you were the chief resident at Stanford?
2006 to 2007.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, the group had probably came into existence around 2000 or even 1999.
Yeah, you had been doing it. Yeah.
But we had like 6 or 8 people, and we wouldn't plan anything ahead of time. It was just kind of make up an agenda on the spur of the moment, and sometimes do personal work. It was pretty similar to what it is now.
Yeah, and it was terrific.
Yeah.
Was it like something that all psychiatric residents wove through?
No.
Or was it an elective, or how did you join it?
If you were wise enough to see how wise David was, just hang out with him.
If I was supervising someone, I insisted they go to the weekly group, the training group. So they'd get the hour of supervision and 2 hours in the group. And I think we were just all psychiatric residents at the time.
Right.
Was it just random? I'm sorry, Leigh, I interrupted you. Was it just random that somebody would have you as their resident, or would they choose you?
They would choose me as the supervisor. There's different people. I'm not doing it anymore. You would have to choose it. You'd have to request, David, and sometimes there was some competition. So I felt I was very lucky that I won that lottery and got David for my supervisor for a full year.
Yay.
And we did some experimenting and even, did some co-therapy. I remember David coming and sitting with me with my couple of patients.
Yeah, I love the group then. I love the group now. It's grown so much bigger now with such a much more diversity of backgrounds and racial and religious and national. We've got melting pot, all sexual orientations, all trainings. I just love the mix of the group, but I think we still have a lot of the small group feel, even though it's so much bigger than it's been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Wonderful then, and it's wonderful and amazing now.
Yeah, and I want to say that Leigh Harrington, you were one of my very first team teachers. So you were the one that gave me the foundation of TEAM in the class that you taught. That was also an online class, and it was, I really feel like you lit the spark along with David. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that now. You had a small group that you did from Sacramento, an online group. And I think Mike Christensen was one of your students too.
Yeah, Mike Christensen was one of my early students. Yes, and Rhonda and many other brilliant people from the online group. And then we had the in-person group in Sacramento. I think that may have been before the online group, and we would come down and join your Stanford group once a month.
Oh, that one. I remember when that was happening too.
Yeah.
Is that only once a month that you'd come down with Cliff and everybody?
With Cliff, yeah. We'd come down once a month, and then we'd meet up in Sacramento once a week, just kind of following the same model.
Oh, I remember that now,
yeah. Yeah.
And we're probably putting our listeners to sleep who don't know what we're talking about and couldn't care less. So let's get on to something exciting.
Well, let me, before we get into the heart of what we're doing today, read this podcast endorsement about actually two podcasts we did, 205, which we did in August of 2020, and episode 272, which we did in December 13th, actually, of 2021. And they were both about should statements and how to crush the negative thought that has the distortion of should statements in it. When somebody sent us a very simple endorsement, Carol, who wrote, I very much appreciated the discussion of shoulds and how shoulds are directed toward others, and then how shoulds are directed toward the world. Yours is the first such discussion I found on this topic. It was so important. It needs more attention. Thank you, Carol.
Well, thank you, Carol. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, Leigh,
nice.
You're here to talk about habits and addictions, and tell us what your thoughts are and what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm so excited to talk about it. And I love David, you and the work that you've done in anxiety, depression, habits, and relationships. And I've been really interested in the idea of, there's so many parts that make your TEAM-CBT approach so powerful. So I couldn't give them all justice, just to say there's so many powerful parts, especially the paradoxical agenda setting pieces. But I've been thinking lately about the idea of thoughts as habits, or the habit of our thoughts, and focusing on kind of micro habits. And then the ability of our habits to change the way we think. With new habits, we can tell ourselves new stories about ourselves. So kind of the transformational power in our lives of habits, even ones that are that might seem small to us. And I've kind of experimented with, I've had some personal experience lately that's kind of starting me down thinking about those things. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts and maybe share a couple anecdotes and see what you think about those.
Yeah, tell us more. You like the many different specific parts of the TEAM model, which can be powerful and lead to effective therapy. But you've been thinking of habits, of how we think, and how we might learn to tell ourselves new stories about ourselves in order to have a transformational experience. Tell us more about that. Give us some examples. Sounds cool.
Yeah. For example, I ran into a kind of difficult, challenging personal situation for the last year or two, and it led me to sometimes having things be really challenging helps us notice things that we wouldn't have noticed if they weren't as challenging. So I had the blessing of having some challenges over the last couple of years. And one thing I noticed was the habit of just what my mind does in the morning. And
say that again. The one habit you noticed was what?
What my mind does in the morning. So I thought, gosh, I'm going through this hard time. what can I do? And I didn't have, I liked already to exercise. I already eat relatively healthy. I don't have an alcohol problem. I had a weight issue, but I had kind of overcome that. I had lost my extra 20 pounds of baby fat that I had from my last pregnancy. So that I had done, but I was still in this place that was challenging. And so I had the idea, I heard of making kind of like a physical goal, a mental goal, and a relationship goal. So the mental goal I thought of was the habit that my mind does in the morning when I wake up. As soon as I wake up, I don't know if this happens to your mind or other people's minds, but my mind would think of what it needs to do. I need to do this. I need to do that. Or I should have done this. I should have done that. I should do this. My mind would be filled with these kind of, let's get to task here. I have this problem I need to figure out. Like that's what my mind would remind me of as soon as I woke up. So I would start off my day with those kind of things. And so I wanted to change that habit. And the physical goal habit I came up with was just to do 3 pull-ups. And at the time I did no pull-ups at all. And my relationship goal was to improve my relationship with 6 people closest to me and to have challenging conversations, which I might be avoiding. And so I did little things, little habit changes for those. And the one to get up in the morning, instead of letting my mind think it's normal thoughts, I would try to notice, what my mind was doing. I think that was the hardest thing. I have to notice, if I think, what do I have to do to make my new habit? One thing I'd have to do is notice and not let my mind just go to work. Kind of a triple column positive thought about that would be like, well, it's so good for my mind to remember about its problems and solve the problems of the day and make sure it makes its list and its task. But I started just waking up, and if my mind started thinking those things, I just started stopping my mind from that. Like, okay, just stop and just appreciate something. So I told my mind a simple thing, which is like, I love my bed. I love my house. I love my lamp, a silly little lamp that sits next to my bed. And it seemed very simple. And when I heard the idea or got this idea, I thought, well, I'm not sure that's really going to do anything for me, but I'll try it. Kind of like your experimental technique, trying to do some experiments, right? Well, let's just see how this works. And I wouldn't say that loving my lamp has transformed my life, but I would say stopping my brain and learning to stop my brain and be in charge of my brain, that has been really empowering.
Mm. So it's like a mini daily mood log.
Yeah. Say more about that, Rhonda.
Well, the event might not be upsetting, but the event that's occurring is you're waking up. Gladly, happily.
Yes.
Gratefully, you're waking up.
Waking up. Yes.
And you're having the thoughts about these should statements about all the things you should do or that you should have done. And then I don't know if you're like seeing, I don't know if you're like seeing the distortions in them, that they're should statements or that you've done that in advance. And now you're kind of like reframing them so that they're not, you're taking the should out of it and making it be a change in the habit of the way you're thinking. Is that kind of right?
Yeah. I think there are thoughts that I found on a daily mood log, and also found as a habit that I was doing. And then I have to catch myself look what I'm doing. I'm doing that habit of shooting myself again. Mm-hmm. And then my new habit would be, if we want to get really specific about our my new habit, what do I want my new habit to be? Mm-hmm. I love my bed. I love my lamp. That's a fun one. But even better is when I was like, I want to do blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. when I changed my habit to, but I started out with something as simple as like, just, I love my lamp. Uh-huh. to end up with like, I want to prepare for this, instead of like, oh, I have to do this, which when I say I have to do this, then I kind of feel drudging, and it can lead to kind of like procrastination or not excitement or decrease my motivation. But if I set myself on a habit of saying, I want to prepare for this. I want to, rework all of these things. I want to, get ready for our group. Then I feel like excited, and then I'm motivated when I go in to do it. And it can be really, I think the tempting thoughts are like, well, maybe if I don't kind of put myself to task, I'm not saying, you need to, maybe I will, like let myself get away with not doing something. Maybe or the tempting thought could be, well, I want to solve this problem. It's very important to let my mind, give myself a hard time about all these things I've been doing. And that way I'll solve these problems. That way I won't make these mistakes. That way I'll do everything on my list. I think those are my kind of like tempting or permissive thoughts. Good morning.
Can you hear my audio?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I had to press the button again. Yeah. That was just going to say that the way you broke that down, I love my lamp, I love my bed, just focus on little steps of change. And then it became a habit. I did a little something like that when I was trying to overcome my fear of smiling, because someone always said, on TV, you should smile and you always look so serious. And it's because I had this camera phobia, and, since I was little, and, I thought I had a bit crooked smile or something. So I started out just walking down the street saying hello to inanimate objects, like, like a telephone pole or, a plant or anything. And then once I got used to doing that, then I would start to smile and say hello to animals, dogs and things, because they're pretty easy and they get real excited and enthusiastic. And then I started trying it with humans, just smiling and saying hello to humans. And then one day I was looking, I got this camera here for the Zoom or for whatever. And then I thought, well, why don't I just, I found out it has a feature you can just take your photograph, just snap a photo. So I just did it a couple times and tried smiling and snapping a couple of photos. Then I looked at them and I thought, oh my gosh, these look fine. And I thought that they were going to look just terrible. And so that was really helpful to me. So that's kind of a part of what you said, but there was more to it. Tell us more, flesh it out a little bit for us, so that if listeners would like to try this thing, they know what to do. And also, I lost your sound partway through, but I think you were going to work on a mental goal, a physical goal, and a relationship goal. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
And so the mental goal was to stop using should statements habitually in the morning. And the first step was to notice the should statements. And then instead of, there was a kind of an experimental aspect and a kind of a exposure aspect that you had to take a chance to see, maybe if I stop hitting myself with these shoulds, I'll be less productive and I won't do what I'm supposed to do. And you decided to take a chance and test that, and just start noticing things that you love and that you appreciate, instead of beating up on yourself constantly. And then that eventually became kind of a new habit. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Although I still sometimes have to put in effort. Sometimes my mind does want to should me in the morning.
Yeah.
But I'm stronger now that I've practiced the habit of noticing. to remind myself either the simple thing of just, I like my bed, I love my lamp.
Yeah.
Which seems kind of silly, but it's funny how even something kind of silly, like you were talking about smiling at inanimate objects, right? Like, yeah, kind of my version of smiling at an inanimate object is saying like, I love my bed, I love my lamp.
Yeah, right.
But still can move you along, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And
yeah,
and
that's why I love having cats too, because I love my cat, and it's nothing better than just hanging out a little bit with your cat and making your cat happy with a little cat candy or some Pepsis. And but that I'm just babbling. I want to get back to the theme of what you're trying to teach us here.
Yeah. I love how you're breaking it down and clarifying, David. I appreciate it. Thanks. So I think then the next step is like, what's the next step in the habit? I think you have the method of little steps for big feats, right? And oftentimes we use that, like in procrastination, we want to get from one place to where we are. We kind of break it down into little steps, right?
Yeah, here's one that I started yesterday. I found this stack of papers that I've been collecting since about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
More. And I kept telling myself I've got to go through it and sort it and everything. And then yesterday I threw away about 5 minutes worth of going through, and I'm not done with it yet. But it's like what you're saying. It's I moved it to a new location, so I could pick it up anytime and find a couple more things and throw them away. I'm going to throw away this Real ID application that I had.
Oh,
the Real ID card thing you're supposed to get, because I realized I've already gotten it, so I don't need all these documents about it anymore. I was saving these for when, I hadn't done it yet. And here's some Department of Motor Vehicles payment authorization. And so I think I'm just going to throw this stuff here away right now. So I just made a little bit more progress. Now
you're making steps again. Right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did that too. I have a huge box here of all of the continuing education courses I've taken for the past literally 20 years. And I thought I really don't need to keep these. But I have this habit of hoarding things. And so I had to first go to the Board of Behavioral Sciences and figure out how long I have to keep them for, and then slowly cull them. So it's cool to hear how you're using that little steps for big feet with habits, Leigh.
Yeah, I think so. Procrastination is so seductive, right?
Mm-hmm.
We procrastinate on a new habit. And we can kind of use little steps for big feats, the idea of doing little pieces of a big goal we want to do. We can
teach me now. Let's say I'm a podcast listener and I want to learn something today and follow through. And so tell me what the kind of things I should be doing. What kind of habit should I be trying to modify, and how can you help me with this? And I know you're going to have a group too coming up for people who want to join virtually and learn how to do this. And we'll put that link in the show notes, and you can tell us about the group you're planning too. But tell me, teach me. Imagine I'm about at the 4th grade level, and I'm trying to learn what I'm supposed to do now. Do I start telling myself, I love my lamp? I don't think that's what I'm supposed to do.
Well, we can start with any habit. And I think we can use the concept of little steps for big feats, even as we kind of grow our habits. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I want to be a massively productive, always thinking positive things person. But I tend to wake up and should myself. Mm-hmm. What's a step between where I am now and where I want to go? Mm-hmm. And maybe the step is, it maybe to positive seems too far, right? Our brain might argue with that. If I woke up usually shitting myself and tomorrow I'm it might be hard for me to wake up and think my life is beautiful and wonderful, especially, maybe I have a certain circumstance going on that makes it hard for my mind to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So then I want to find something that my mind can believe. Right?
Yeah.
Well, instead of shitting myself in the morning, for example, or a listener, instead of waking up and reminding themselves of maybe things that they've done wrong or things they think they should do, or giving themselves a hard time, maybe they want to find something neutral to tell themselves.
Oh, mm-hmm.
As silly as I love my lamp is, and I totally agree, it's silly. It's just a neutral thing. And it could be, I love my lamp. I love my kitty. I love my pillow, or how soft it is, or whatever it is that they like or enjoy. They might want to tell themselves that something as a step along the way to where they want to get. What can I tell myself right now that I believe? What do I want to tell myself? And if I'm not already there, if I'm not ready to tell myself that great thing, what's like a step along the path that I could start telling myself that I would believe right now? And that might be, that might start with, I love my lamp, I love my kitty. And then maybe once I'm doing that for some time, and that becomes easier and easier for me because it becomes a habit, a more automatic habit.
Mm.
Once we use the word habit because we do it regularly, right? So once we're doing that regularly, then we want to step it up. When I'm like, oh, I wake up in the morning and I'm not shitting myself anymore. I'm just waking up neutral. Then maybe I want to say, take the next step. And maybe for me, the next step is, I can do this. Maybe it's not like already I'm totally fabulous and incredible. I don't wake up telling myself that. But I'd love to one day wake up telling myself that. But maybe my next step is, I can do this hard thing. Right? Or I want to do what's on my list today. Instead of like, I should do it. It's such a drag. It's so dreary. Oh, I don't want to do it. It's going to be so painful. I could practice, and you can experiment, right? You can see, I'm not sure if this is the thought I want to tell myself, but why don't I try it out? Like for 5 days, I'm going to wake up and tell myself, I want to do that number one thing on my list. I really want to go through that paperwork on my desk, or on David's desk and in Rhonda's box for me in my bag next to my desk, right? Like, mm-hmm. I really want to see what's in there. I'd feel so great if I were done. And we can use the experimental technique and try that out. Try out that new habit.
Would this be similar to using positive affirmations?
It could be. I think there's a distinction. I think positive affirmations work only if we kind of use the criteria that you developed, David, of like, do we believe it? And does it put the lie to the initial thought that's bothering us?
Right.
Positive affirmations can be great or can be useless. Mm-hmm. Like, just tell myself every morning, I'm wonderful, but I don't believe it. And I'm using it as an affirmation. I don't think that really works at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, would this be helpful to people who are depressed, who are in the habit of and believing, I'm not as good as I should be, or I'm inferior because there's nothing really very special about me. I don't have any talents or great accomplishments, or I'm bound to be miserable because I'm not loved. I'm not in a relationship, or or someone with public speaking anxiety. I know I'm going to blow it when I give my talk, or those would be like emotional targets, or are these more like losing weight? Like what should our?
I love all those targets you mentioned in terms of like habits of the way we're thinking about ourselves, either kind of depression basket type thoughts, right? I'm not good enough. Because of this or that reason, I'll never amount to anything. I didn't accomplish something, right? Mm-hmm. Or anxiety type ones. I won't, I'm going to fail. I won't do well enough. It's scary. I can't do that. Right. I think we can use it for both of those thoughts. As right along with a mood log and the straightforward technique, and always externalization of voices that is so powerful.
I wonder if you could use it in relationships too. Like, could you wake up and say, I'm grateful for my spouse?
Yeah. So one of my relationship goals was to become closer and develop closer relationships with my 6 people most close to me. And so I listed who are those people and how do I want to become closer to them? And I think, in relationships, becoming closer to them is for me, developing love in myself for that person, right? That's the way I'm going to be most effective, with picking up David's book, feeling good together and making the best use of his 5 secrets, right? If I'm feeling love and care and wanting to have closeness for someone. And one of the people I think I had the most transformation with is my mom. Used to, my mom and I were not super close growing up. I was super close with my dad, and had a great relationship with him. And he died about 6.5 years ago. And I think that was a big loss for all of us. And when I had difficulties in my life, sometimes I would, I think some people have this habit, and I would happen to me, not all the times, but when I would have difficulties, sometimes I'd be like, oh, it's because my mom, criticized me in this way, or she didn't believe in me or something like that. And that, of course, didn't grow a feeling of love in me for my mom, didn't help me implement better relationship skills with my mom, and kept me distance from her. But over the last couple of years, I said, okay, I want to change my relationship with my mom. And I focused on I'm just going to focus my thoughts on what I love and appreciate about her. And luckily, there's a lot to love and appreciate about my mom. And once she retired, once I had my second daughter, she came and visited us, and she would come and visit us for 1 to 2 months at a time. And even though we were not feeling really close, she is amazing with my children. I get tearful thinking about how amazing my mom is with both my girls. And so if I notice myself start thinking something negative about her, I would just stop. I have to notice, but I would stop and I would remind myself, but I'm so appreciative of the way she is with my girls. I really, even if we're not, she and I are hanging out, going out to dinner and having a fun time. I just would watch her just read with my girls, do art projects with my girls, sewing projects with my girls. She just poured her heart and soul into being present with my girls. And at first I felt a little sad. Oh, I wish I had gotten to do some of those things with her. And maybe I did, and I forgot about those, because that happens, as children, we sometimes overlook all the amazing things our parents did for us. And I'm sure that happened. But I just practiced noticing all the things I appreciated about her. And one day, about 6 months to a year ago, I was hanging out with her, and I was like, Mom, I'm enjoying hanging out with you. And that was so wonderful for me to be enjoying hanging out with my mom. And then I practiced these thoughts, into myself, right? And then a few months later, I had the thought, I don't know if you're allowed to swear on here, so I won't, but I had the idea, I have a kick butt mom. Never had that thought before in my life. I had just thought, oh, my dad was wonderful and he loved me so much. And my mom, she was kind of, my dad's kind of an optimist. So he was always optimistic about me. And my mom's more of a realist. So she'd always let me know how things might not happen how I want. When I was, growing up, sometimes that felt hard, but to have the experience, a few months ago of just wow, I have a but mom, it just felt so great. And I thought, coming to our cognitive behavioral model, right? I start telling myself my mom is great and it feels so good to me. Being with her.
The way I'm hearing what you're saying, I was trying to put it in 2 different frames of reference.
Yeah.
To try to grasp it, but it sounds like you're saying that if there's someone you don't like and get along with, just start noticing and telling yourself positive things about them, and then you'll start to feel positive about them, and then a better relationship will naturally evolve from that. Is that correct? What I'm saying? Am I getting what you're saying, or?
Yeah, I think you're totally getting what is possible. I don't want to say that, that's always 100% true and it's easy or simple. And it certainly took me many, many years to get to the place to do it effectively. And I think that, my mom certainly helped by keeping showing up and
sure,
having wonderful things about her that I could appreciate. Right.
Mm-hmm. The other frame of reference and trying to understand what you're saying, because I haven't really grasped it. I can give you an example, but in the early days of cognitive therapy, and that this actually became kind of, I guess, what meditation is supposed to do for people. But we used to use the concept of distraction or thought stoppage.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you notice you're getting into an obsessiveness or negative thoughts going through your brain over and over again, you kind of, in fact, we used to tell people to wear a rubber band on their wrist and snap the rubber band or count it on the counter, and then switch over to something positive. And I know similarly in meditation, you're supposed to focus I don't meditate, but focus your mind on something, and then when it wanders, just gently pull it back. The same kind of idea. But I eventually gave up on that strategy because it didn't seem very effective. So I'm still a little confused. Now, when Rhonda and I did a live demonstration in the Tuesday group recently, we had a little moment of mild tension that went away, and it was a great experience. But as co-therapist, and so Rhonda has mentioned it a couple times. We've talked about it, and I don't know if probably not satisfactorily, but brought it to conscious awareness. And I have tons of positive thoughts about Rhonda because I just think you're fantastic, Rhonda, as you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what a gift you are. And you're always saying very positive things about David. But I think it's sometimes necessary to bring these things under the surface to conscious awareness and talk about them. Perhaps not always, and maybe you didn't take that step with your mom or didn't have to. But maybe one of you two can explain what I'm trying to say. But I'm not necessarily sold on the idea of just trying to be real positive when you have a conflict with somebody. Obviously, it worked with you and your mom. Can you explain what I'm trying to explain, Rhonda or Leigh?
Yeah, I think it's totally true, and I am thinking back to my experience of the minor conflict that you and Rhonda have, knowing how much affection you both have for each other and the affection that I have for both of you. I think when we have that underlying affection, I guess I wouldn't advocate brushing anything under the rug. And I wouldn't say that my mom didn't know my feelings or that I held them from her. I would say I had challenging conversations with my mom as well.
I see.
And I think those were helpful in our interaction together.
One thing in your favor is that when we get in a conflict with sometimes we get into distorted thinking about the person, including labeling and overgeneralization. We see them as this bad glob, as this one bad thing, more or less.
Yeah.
And you begin to overlook all the really neat things about that person, as well as their capacity to be radically different from the box you've got them in. And, I can think of someone I had some, very acrimonious interactions with And kind of by noticing the positives, like what you're saying, it has evolved into just a terrific relationship. And so I can kind of get behind what you're saying as well. But
it also sounds like what you were doing was that you were taking full responsibility for the health of your relationship. And the way you were doing was changing your thoughts about what was going on in your relationship. Is that accurate or no? Yeah,
I think so. And I think I struggled with that idea of taking full responsibility and what that would look like for a long time. I mean, for many years, I learned from David for a long time. And I think sometimes we have like the moment when we finally get what someone's saying, and the moments when we think we do, but we actually don't.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I think that in a way, David has this concept of us creating our own interpersonal reality, right? And while I continue to think frustrating thoughts about blamey kind of thoughts, right, about my mom, I wasn't creating a warm, great relationship with her. But I thought that it was her, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. But now I like when my mom comes to visit and people are like, how can you have your mom stay with you for a whole month? Like, how do you do that? Like, that would drive me crazy. I'm like, I love it when my mom comes to stay, for a month or 6 weeks. And I think there is that part of like creating that interpersonal reality. Like, and sometimes I feel sad that I created this, not terrible, but not very good, interpersonal reality with her for many years. And I think that starting with my thoughts was helpful in some way.
As well as then verbalizing those thoughts.
Right.
Like the person, and then they begin to really appreciate the kind things you're saying about them.
Right. Like, I think if I had thought all those great thoughts, but then I kept acting the same way, or I didn't tell her, but I told her, I was like, Mom, I'm having a good time with you. And we have like a really like kind of like we're able to share what we think and feel about things. And we've done that even when it hasn't been great things that we had to say. But when the things that we had to share were like became positive things, I don't know for sure. I could ask her more about how that was for her.
Well, I'm thinking about the pushback we're going to get from listeners on this podcast.
Yeah, let's hear. What do you think?
Well, let's say a woman's in an abusive relationship. Then she keeps having positive thoughts about her husband or her boyfriend or whatever. And, he's a good guy and he's going to change. Whereas what she should really be doing is to get out of that relationship and perhaps using the 5 secrets of effective communication to avoid provoking him so she can get out alive. Everything in its opposite is simultaneously true.
Right.
And Rhonda will explain what I'm trying to explain.
I think.
Go ahead. Well, I'm thinking of the acid test, David. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of, Rhonda.
Go for it, Leigh.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking that your acid test comes in here. Like, if this person continues to act and think and behave the way they are, do I want to have a closer relationship with them? What do I want to do? And answer to that question with my mom, despite everything, was that I did want a closer relationship with.
Yeah.
And she wasn't, in that moment actively harming me. I may have about something that happened when I was a child. I wish that she had, believed in my ability to, when I was applying to colleges, she's like, oh, your dad thinks you can get into any college. And then I got in every college I applied to, and I felt like kind of put down by her, right? But this is something that happened years ago. She wasn't continuing to harm me in any way. And so when I asked myself, like, if she continues to behave exactly as she was, do I want to be closer to her? Like, yes.
Yeah.
I did. But if someone there are people for whom that isn't my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some strategizing has to be happening behind the scenes, and it's just not the idea that positivity is going to win the day with anyone. And in a way, positivity can win the day to a certain extent with almost everyone, like that Dietrich Bonhoeffer's books, Prisoner for God and Papers and something from Prison. Prisoner for God was one of them, and Letters and Papers from Prison was another one. And he was arrested by the Nazis in World War II. You may know the story, or you may not. And he was a Lutheran minister and kind of a leader, and he would not go along with the Nazis, kind of like trying to find a Republican who won't go along with Trump. And he was one who would not go along with Hitler, and so they imprisoned him, and they put him out in front of the firing squad and said, unless you endorse Nazism, we're going to kill you now. And they did that on 2 occasions, but he wouldn't back down. And then when they put the shackles on him, there were bombings going on. So he, all around. And when they put the shackles on him, he thanked the guards. And at first they got angry and said, "Why are you thanking us for putting these shackles on?" And he would treat them in a real positive way and say, "Well, I don't believe, in your cause, but I do respect you as a human being, and I think you believe that you're doing the right thing, and that's why I'm thanking you." And eventually he won them over, and they gave him paper and pencils so he could write things, and they would smuggle them out of prison for him. And then they were eventually published as, Prisoner for God and Letters and Papers from Prison, which I thought was pretty inspiring. Sadly, they took him out a third time in front of the firing squad, and again told him to change or they would kill him. And again, he wouldn't back down. And that time they did kill him. But certainly to treat people in a positive way, if you're knowing about what you're doing and not being naive about it, it can make a powerful impact on virtually anyone. I think the problem is with our human nature, we don't want to. We want to get back at that person. We want to blame them. We want to defend themselves. And so there's a huge motivational dimension, I think, to what you're saying with regard to relationships, and probably all 3 goals: mental, physical, and relationship goals. That the motivation is going to be a crucial first step. And then your habit change thing might be a tool along the way.
Absolutely, yeah. That motivational piece is just crucial.
Massive.
Yeah, massive.
So you did that motivational piece, didn't you, Leigh? Where you said, "This is my relationship with my mother. I want it to get to be I want to have a better relationship."
Yeah.
How would you use the motivational piece? How would you incorporate the motivational piece in a different type of a goal that you wanted to change, like with your physical goal or with the habit goal?
The mental habit or
the mental habit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, David has the triple paradox, right, where we look at the advantages of keeping our old habit, keeping our old pattern, right, and the disadvantages of the new one, and then what are the values? Like usually there's a great reason. There's some nice thing that we're hanging on to, right, with our
negativity, say.
With our negativity, right, or with my all my shitting, right. I think, I really value, for example, there with waking up and letting my mind think I shouldn't have done this and I should do this and I need to that. When I did a triple column on that, the advantage of my habit, one, I'm used to it. Oftentimes with our habits, we're just, right, they're comfortable. So like, I'm very comfortable with my brain getting up and shooting me into things, and look how far it's gotten me, in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great accomplishments and high standards and integrity and, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Right. Blah, blah, blah. Exactly. It's driving me. And then when I think of the disadvantages of this new thing, this new idea of telling myself something new, whatever it is I decide to tell myself, first of all, I have to notice my old habit. Like, that's kind of a burden, because I could just wake up and let my mind think whatever it wants, but now I'm going to have to start noticing what it thinks.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, but, waking up and reading a list of shoulds that you need to complete that day. I mean, that says something's like you're really an accomplished person and you're really organized and you can get things done. That says a lot of great things about you. I mean, why would you want to change that?
Yeah. And I have all these goals and dreams, and I'm very idealistic because I want to do all these things, even if I'm not accomplishing them all. Right. Like, but I want to. I'm like taking responsibility. I'm going to do this. I'm going to solve all these problems. For sure. Yeah. I think all of those things played out. And then I have to ask myself, as David has in his free chapter, on habits and addictions from feeling great, right? Like, after all of this, like, why would you want to change? Like, why would I want to do that? Right. So I, when I think about that, I think like, I want to become empowered in my life. I want to, and even something as simple as like, I want to prove to myself I'm a person who can make changes in my life. Right. Even if my goal isn't, 30 pounds or, I don't know, a certain weight or something like, I want to be able to tell myself a story about myself that's like, I can manage this brain that I have here. I can manage this mind. I can empower myself in my life. So
the first thing, if our listeners are wanting to make a mental goal, like becoming less self-critical, less negative thinking, or a physical goal like dieting or cutting down on alcohol, or some habit that you want to modify, or a relationship goal like improving a relationship on someone that I've been in conflict with and not getting along with. The first thing would be to consider using the triple paradox. And since that's kind of hard for people to understand, you make three lists. The first list is all the benefits of this thing that you're trying to change. All the benefits of your negative thinking, or all the benefits of overeating, or all the benefits of drinking, and whatever, all the benefits of biting your nails, or whatever you're trying to change. You list all the really tremendous positives about that thing, and then you make a second list of how sucky it's going to be to change, and all the really good reasons, like why dieting, if you want to lose weight, dieting sucks. You don't get to eat your wonderful foods. You don't get all that comfort. You have to get out and exercise. And for most people, there's no runner's high. There's no joy in exercise. Some people do like it. Most of us do not. And so you're going to have to get out there, and it's been raining and it's cold lately and that type of thing. And then in your last column, you list all of the things that your status quo, your so-called bad habit shows about you and your core values that's positive and awesome. Like your if it's self-critical thinking, it shows you have high standards. It shows that you're honest about your flaws. It shows that you're accountable. It shows that you're humble, and on and on and on. And so you really try to sell yourself on these three different categories of keeping the status quo. Now, that's the opposite of what most of our users do, who someone's trying to sell you on change and you're trying to sell yourself on change. And the more you do that, the more I guarantee you'll get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, I'm saying, try to sell yourself on not change and spell out all the really good reasons not to change. And then you can ask yourself, well, why in the world would I want to give up all of that? It makes no sense. And then, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, suddenly the person says, oh, but I really do want to do that. And then they have a lot of drive. And then if you come to that point, then you could get into your program of, is it to be positive about one little thing, or what is the program you're recommending exactly? With regard to your mom, it was start noticing positive things about her. With regard to your should statements in the morning, instead of beating up on yourself with all these shoulding on yourself, so to speak, to start noticing, even if you don't believe it at first, oh, I love my lamp, or I love my bed, or just start to think in a more positive direction until it becomes a habit. And then for physical goals, like let's say you've decided, okay, I really do want to lose some weight, then what would be your idea for some little first step? I think that's what you're trying to sell us on, little steps for big feats. What would be the little step there?
What would be the little step for a physical goal?
Yeah, say for a weight loss, getting in better shape type of goal.
Yeah. I think one thing that's super helpful, and you teach this, is being really specific about what you're going to do. And in each of the examples we talked about, I was really specific. Neither of them were like mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
But very specific, right? So, and I think if we focus on what I'm going to put into it as opposed to what I'm going to get out of it, it's a lot easier to measure. I like to think, can a third party be there and tell if I'm doing what I want to do or not? Like if someone was just like following me around and saying, am I doing what I agreed to do? So if it was a weight loss goal, often there's either a dietary aspect or a physical aspect. For me, I made the goal of doing pull-ups. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't actually because of a weight loss goal. I just thought that would be a fun, or like a physical goal I could do. And at the time I could do 0 pull-ups. But I said, each day I'm going to go to the pull-up bar and I'm going to try to pull myself up, no matter whether I can or I can't. So my agreement was to go to the bar. So if someone was observing me, they would know, did Leigh go to that bar today? No, because we want to be able to answer yes or no to that question. Like if it was a dietary thing, some people like to use a certain amount of calories, for example. That's kind of complicated for me, but maybe there are dietary goal is I only eat fruits and vegetables after 5 p.m. Right? That would be very specific. If I were a third party observing, I would know yes or no. I'm doing what I said I would do.
Yeah. So you've set a measurable, observable goal. I did that same push-up thing, pull-up things. I couldn't do any. And then I really got into it. And I got to where I was doing 100 to 300 pull-ups in like 2 minutes. And then I had to put weights on me, like 300 pounds, not.
Whoa.
And I don't know if you saw the show notes on a recent podcast that we had on habits and addictions.
I did.
Did you see that? My head on this weightlifter's body.
Yes.
And for buff guy, yes. I saw
and you can't. And I wrote this silly thing that just took 3 weeks. You can't imagine all the people that are writing to me and congratulating me on what a terrific job I did, and wondering what technique that I used.
Like I want to do what David's doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that.
So did we kind of put that into some kind of an understandable summary?
Yeah.
First, you do the motivational part, and then you do the little steps for big feats, and you put a measurable, specific goal for yourself. Right.
Something very measurable and specific. And sometimes it doesn't matter that it doesn't have to be grand.
Yeah. Right.
But it does have to be measurable and specific. And you need to answer the question at the end of the day, did you do what you said you're going to do or not, whatever it is.
Yeah. Now, I've had a goal of running 2 miles a day. And last week, 6 days a week, last week I did it 6 days a week. I might say that I do not in any way enjoy slogging or running or walking. And I've never once had anything other than a runner's low.
Oh.
But I've kept up with. Now today I had to go to the dentist in the morning, and then I had to do some recording for the app, and then I had to record the Sterling Morey podcast, and then this one with you, and then at 5 I've got the group.
Right.
And I might not be able to do the running today. I could probably squeeze it in. I'm all dressed up and ready for the group. So
You look nice.
What do I do?
I think this is a good question. It almost gets to that accountability step, right? And also about what to do when we have a miss.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do we tell ourselves?
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to talk about that. For me, what I found is if I had a miss, like one day I didn't do pull-ups, I didn't go to the bar. If I beat myself up about it, I might be less likely to go to the bar the next day. And I just felt crummy. And since I prefer to feel crummy, I would, in your accountability step, you suggest that we say, like, I succeeded, right? Or I stubbornly refused. Right.
So it's really accountable.
Right. So I'd be like, wow, I stubbornly refused today. Look at that. And instead of judging myself for that and giving myself a hard time and blah, 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 I'd say, all right, I'm recommitting. I recommit and recommit and recommit. And so even if I didn't do 90 out of 90 days, I ended up doing 80 out of 90 days. And that got me from 0 pull-ups to 5 pull-ups.
Can you do 5?
Well, I could. Then I took a break, but I got up to 5.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Those are not easy.
No, I had some injuries, so I can't. I had to.
Was that the injury you had at Stanford?
The
bicycle injury?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Is that still hassling you, or?
It still impacts me. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
That was so sad when you lost your legs in that accident. And now we can laugh about it.
Sorry.
I'm just being stupid.
So I like the idea of being honest and saying, okay, I refuse today, but not giving myself any secondary hassles about it. And deciding I'm recommitted to it tomorrow, because really what matters is that I do it 90% of the time or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Because if I beat myself up so much that I just stop doing it, and if I'm kind of all or nothing thinking about it, if I'm either I'm in or I'm out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're exactly right. If you get into the all or nothing thinking, it really sabotages your chances for success. That is so true.
Like I'm thinking if you don't, jog, slog today, but you jog and slog the next 10 days, that's a lot better than jogging, slogging today and then skipping the next 10 days or and then quitting, right. Saying, I guess I'm not.
I don't even aim for 6 days except as a kind of vague thing. Yeah. But when I'm out there, I just try for 10 steps at a time.
Yeah.
And 10 steps isn't that tough.
Yeah.
And then try another 10 steps. That works for me. Anything else that we should be focusing on here? I really agree with your idea of not beating up on yourself when you can't be performing perfectly according to the plan you set for yourself.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that jogging, slogging, and how we can, like you were talking about, not enjoying it. How we keep going when things are difficult. And I think those mental habits that we have in the moment, like I notice if I am someone who can get a runner's high, but I don't always. And when I'm kind of new back into it, I don't.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm kind of tempted. And sometimes I'm telling myself like, oh, I hate this. I should stop. And then it's not very fun. But if I tell myself something like, look, I'm doing it, even though it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Or, look, I'm doing it, even though I'm not enjoying it. That helps me with the next 5 or 10 steps.
Right.
Well, this podcast, I think we've been on for an hour, and it's been really awesome, Leigh, to hear your thinking. And I hope it kind of also sparks people's interest in learning about the boot camp that you're putting on starting next month. How would somebody contact you if they're interested in learning more about the way you're thinking and teaching about, the little steps for big feet with habits and addictions?
Yeah, thanks, Rhonda. It's been so fun to hang out with both of you. And I love you both so much and love spending time with you and the way your minds work. People could find me on my website, which is TEAM-CBT
That's one word.
That's all one word.
Therapy training. .com. Does that mean your boot camp is only for therapists?
My boot camp is for therapists, and the general public can also benefit, I think.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And who should consider going to your boot camp? And how many weeks will it be?
The boot camp will be for 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I highly encourage therapists to join. I'd love, we have such an amazing community of therapists. It's so great to hang out with them and all strengthen our skills. I love doing that. And anyone who wants to change a habit, anyone who's like struggled and even would be willing to change like even a micro habit. Right?
So it's focused on habits and addictions. So if you're a listener right now and you want to get some support and innovative approaches to habits and addictions, you might want to consider Leigh's 5-week boot camp, which starts in February. This will be published the last week in January, so you have to move a little quickly. And to learn more, go to teamtherapytraining.com. That's one word, teamtherapytraining.com. And you can find out all about Leigh, Dr. Leigh Harrington, a psychiatrist, expert in TEAM-CBT, Stanford trained, but a beautiful, gentle, real, down-to-earth, vulnerable human being. And if you've got a habit that's been bugging you and you'd like to get empowered and get some support and direction in changing your habit, changing your life, check out teamtherapytraining.com.
Thank you so much, David, for your kind words and for your years of patience, wisdom, and brilliance.
Yeah. And then maybe we get a report at the end of your boot camp and you can tell us what it was like. How many people do you want to have in your boot camp?
As many as would like to join and benefit. Yeah. We'll make it I'm dedicated to making it effective. People who show up, whether we're small or big.
And how many hours a week will it be? 2 hours? An hour and a half?
We'll be meeting 1 hour a week, but we'll have like 1 hour of didactic as well. So it'll be like 1 hour of didactic learning and 1 hour of interactive.
Okay. And suppose, I don't know what the word didactic means.
Oh yeah. Like 1 hour of teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. 1 hour of teaching and 1 hour of interactive work.
Practice and stuff.
Yeah. The teaching part we're going to record so that people can do that at their own time. And then we'll have an hour where we're all together.
Well, sounds good. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I will see you guys in just a little while at our Tuesday training group. So if any of you are a therapist and you want to get some free training, if you're in California, you can join the Tuesday group, which is at Stanford from 5 to 7. It's virtual. So contact me, David, at feelinggood.com. And we'd love to have you join the Tuesday group. And for therapists from around the world, Rhonda has meets at 11, did you say?
9 a.m.
Oh, 9 a.m. on
Wednesdays, Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, and so that one will be suitable for people from India or Europe or
anywhere internationally.
England. Yeah.
We have someone from Mongolia joining us soon.
Oh, that's cool. So you'd contact Rhonda at feelinggreattherapycenter.com, and you can get all these links in the show notes, which you can find on my website or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Generally, it has a way for you to click and see the show notes. So that's about it. Anything else, Rhonda?
Thank you both so much.
Oh, just thank you, Leigh. Thank you for your wisdom and your creativity and your expansion of the team model into this new area.
Wow, thank you, Rhonda, for hosting, and thank you, David, for...
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, and I forgot to say at the beginning, so I'm going to say it now. Everyone, you've just listened to episode 279.
Fantastic.
See you later.
Wonderful.
Okay,
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.